Hello and welcome to Class Time, your daily classroom for CSEC students. Watch this lesson in real time on Television Jamaica's YouTube channel or One Spot Media. In today's English lesson, we will continue to focus on persuasive writing, specifically persuasive techniques. I'm Vanessa Francis. So over the past few lessons, we have been looking at persuasive techniques. So we're continuing that look today. And as a result, these are our objectives. So of course, you should be able to discuss various persuasive techniques. You should also be able to analyze examples of these persuasive techniques and create examples of persuasive techniques as well. Now, before we get into the techniques for today, we need to, of course, stimulate the little minds. So last time we looked at if you ever had to convince various people to do different things. Now we're flipping the script. Have you ever been in a situation where someone would have to convince you to do something? So think about these scenarios and what would it take for someone to convince you of these things? So the first thing, what would it take to convince you to give away all of your favorite clothes? Now, perhaps someone would like to borrow something, or your parents want to convince you that you're not wearing these clothes, so you need to give them away. Or perhaps you have outgrown them, because, you know, some of us have grown a little bit in the past year. So our clothes may not fit as well as they used to. So what are the things that someone would have to say to you to convince you to part with your favorite shirt, your favorite jeans, your favorite skirt, your favorite whatever it is? What are some of the things they would need to do to convince you to let them go? What would it take to convince you to give up your phone for 2 whole weeks? 2 weeks with no phone. And we don't mean that your parents put you on punishment. That's totally different. This is a situation where you have to volunteer to give it up. So what would someone need to say to you to convince you that you must let go of your phone, no phone use, for all of 2 weeks? Not 2 days, not 2 hours, 2 weeks. What would it take to convince you to give up your favorite food for a month? Now, during the Lenten season, many of us have given up different things. So, unfortunately, I had to give up chicken, and anybody who knows me knows that chicken is my best friend. But I decided to give it up, as well as other meats. So now, what would somebody have to say to you to convince you to give up ice cream, give up cake? Do you like rice? Do you like bread? What is your favorite food? And can you see yourself giving it up for an entire month? And what would somebody have to tell you in order to get you to agree to do that? Our next scenario. What would it take to convince you to live in the middle of a desert or a jungle for a whole year? Now, keep in mind, if you're in the middle of the desert or in the middle of the jungle, you don't have any access to any kind of technology. So you're giving up the phone for more than 2 weeks this time. You might have to live in dangerous circumstances. So who could tell you anything? And what would they have to say to convince you to do this? To live in the middle of a jungle or in the middle of a desert for an entire year, cut off from all civilization. Now, some of these are a little outlandish, of course, but the idea is when you are approaching writing persuasively, you have to put yourself in the position of a listener or a reader who is not on the side that you're taking. So you have to pull out everything that would convince this person. So put yourself in that person's shoes. What would somebody have to say to me to convince me to believe this if I didn't already believe it? So that's the type of attitude, that's the type of approach you need to take as well. So here are the techniques we're going to look at today. First one, the use of colloquial language. Now, colloquial language, it might be an unfamiliar term, so let's look at it in more details. So basically, it is everyday language. It is informal. It is conversational. So when you're talking to your friends, when you're talking to your peers, anyone in a social setting, an informal setting, that is most likely the type of language you would use. Now, remember, you are writing an essay, which might take various formats. So why would we encourage you to incorporate the use of colloquial language? Think of some reasons why everyday language, informal language, might help to convince, might help to persuade. Think about that. Now, it appears friendly because, again, it's your everyday language. So it is the way you would talk to your friends. Now, what would happen there is that the audience now somewhat feels connected to you. The audience feels as if you and they are on the same level. So because it is friendly, it endears you to the speaker, to the listener, sorry. So you, the speaker, would be endeared to the listener, or you, the writer, would be endeared to the reader. Now, be very careful. Even though it is your ordinary everyday language and it is informal, you must not be rude. So you stop short of being rude. Rudeness is not encouraged. So it is informal. It is something that allows your audience to feel as if you and they are companions, but you're not going to cross the line and be rude. So it can't be rude, and you're not going to incorporate it in a very formal context. So you would use colloquial language depending on the type of writing you're required to do. So now, what are the effects? So as we mentioned before, it has an inclusive tone. So your audience feels as if they are a part of you. And the audience now is exposed to this language. So the audience is exposed to what you're saying. They understand what you're saying. So it's nothing that they have to go learn. It's nothing that is unfamiliar to them. It's very familiar. And of course, it endears you now to the audience because, again, your audience feels as if you're their friend. You're talking to them as if you are friends with them. So they'll feel that coming across in your speech or your writing. So, of course, think about how you would get this done. How can you incorporate colloquial language in your persuasive writing? So here's one example of how you could do it. That idea totally grossed me out. So, of course, right here you're trying to convince them that something was unpleasant. So by using this expression, your audience is aware of what it means to be grossed out, so they understand what you're trying to say. Another one, charity work these days seems to be more for the gram than for the needy. Again, another expression that a young audience would understand. People are taking pictures or posting. Social media is very high on the charts right now. So they do things for the gram. So the expression used there will be understood by your audience because they're understanding that what you're saying is that people are doing charity work, not because of charity, but just for the exposure that they can get. So now we move to our next technique, which is using formal language. So we looked at the informal, so of course we have to look at the formal now. So you should have an idea already what formal language is. So it is a more extensive and sophisticated use of language. So unlike colloquial language that was everyday language, ordinary language, social language, formal now you take a more methodical approach to it. It is more strategic, it is more expressive in a formal way. So you're not going to use those casual terms you would normally use. You're going to structure your argument to sound a particular way. Now think about it. If you're structuring your argument to sound a particular way, to make it very formal, what are the advantages of doing that? So let's look at the effects. Of course, the first thing and the most obvious thing, it lends an air of credibility because your argument now sounds very authoritative. You're not being very emotional. You're being very practical. You're being very strategic, as was said. So it has more authority to it because of how you have used your language. Of course, it has a more commanding tone now. So you sound as if you know what it is you're talking about. You're presenting the argument in a way that will strike some amount of confidence in what you're saying. And of course, if you do all of this, then the audience will have more respect for what you're saying because what you're saying sounds very factual. What you're saying sounds very authoritative. So what you're saying sounds very true and therefore very believable. And of course, you come off as knowing. You seem as if you know what you're talking about. Now, think of inclusive language. Examples of formal language. So here we go. If the situation in emergency wards with increasingly low staff retention rates is taken into consideration, there would be concerns about the capacity of hospitals to maintain adequate doctor-to-patient ratios. Now, if you look carefully at that example, doesn't it sound authoritative to you? It certainly does not sound informal. We have no slang terms, no everyday language being used in there. All of what is in there is designed to sound authoritative. It is designed to sound commanding. So when you use an expression like this, you come off as someone who knows exactly what they're talking about and somebody who your audience can have ultimate confidence in. So now we're going to look at inclusive language. What is it, of course? So as the name suggests, it's inclusive, which means you're going to include. And because of that, you're not going to belittle anyone. You're not going to put forward any stereotypes. You're not going to make anyone feel trivial. You're not going to make anyone feel less than. So you're not going to use any of the usual prejudice markers to exclude anyone. So you're not going to show up anybody based on their race or their class or their gender or if they have a disability. Because the language is inclusive, you want to make everyone feel included. So when you use inclusive language, you're going to use pronouns such as we and our and us. Those pronouns make your audience feel as if you and they are on the same side. You and they are experiencing the same things that appeal to you, appeal to them. The same things that matter to you also matter to them. So here are the effects now. So of course, obviously, it will create a sense of togetherness. So you create this solidarity. You give the impression that what you're saying represents everyone. So everyone is important and everyone matters in this situation. And of course, because it is inclusive, you're going to avoid any type of prejudice and you're not going to set up a situation where somebody feels isolated or someone feels ostracized. Now, naturally, if you include your audience, then they're going to agree with you. They're going to be more inclined to agree with you because you have set up a situation where they feel like you and they are on the same side. You and they are together in this battle, whatever it is you're fighting for or against. So the audience that wants to belong to a group will feel as if they belong to the group you are in. You have called them over to you. You have welcomed them with open arms. And now you're ready to fight together against a common foe. So let's look at some examples of how you do this. So you could say, we need to band together and protect what is ours. So again, those important pronouns, we and ours. So you have made them feel that whatever it is that is important to you is also important to them. The next example, we are all in this together. We've been hearing this quite a lot. And the whole effect that is created, you feel as if you're part of something that is bigger than you, you're part of something that is important, and you are part of something willingly. You have not been singled out. You have been pulled in because just as how I am in it, you are in it too. So now let's look at exclusive language. Now, we looked at inclusive a while ago, and we said it was language that creates a solidarity, a feeling of solidarity. It creates togetherness. So what do you think exclusive language does? It would do the opposite. So instead of creating a here we are together vibe, and we're all in this together, exclusive language still has a togetherness, but there is also that little line of demarcation. So there is a group of people over here, and there's another group over there. So what it does, it alienates a particular group, or it omits a particular group or things. So the idea is you are setting up a situation where it is an us versus them. So you have a situation where we are on this side fighting together, but there is a group of people over on that side that we must not ever agree with, a group of people who are against us, a group of people we must not participate with. So the pronouns you use here, instead of the we and the our and the us, you're going to use the they and the them and the those, and you're going to emphasize the they and the them and the those to show that whoever you're trying to convince must not be part of the they or the them or the those. So, what's the possible effect now of you using this? Think about it. When you use inclusive language, you wanted to create solidarity among the people you're trying to convince. So you want them to agree with you. So you already set up a situation where they feel as if they are part of what you're saying. Now, when you're trying to isolate another group, what you want to do, you still want to ensure that the people you're trying to convince are on your side. However, in order to keep them on your side, you're going to show them, stay on this side because over there is another side that you do not want to be a part of because they are not good. So here's one way you could do it. It can be used to target or accuse particular groups. So again, the us versus them. It's me and you against the world. We've heard that in many songs. And you generate a sense of solidarity among those not being excluded. So those who are not on your side are not the desirable group. So your desirable group is over here where you want your audience to be. And you want your audience to be aware of the fact that there's another group that they should not be a part of. So just in case somebody in your audience wanted to believe the other side might hold some merit, right here you're showing them, no, you don't want to go over there because you'll be going against us. So here's an example of what you could do now. They can never understand how much their lack of empathy reflects badly on their customer service. So again, you're using up your pronouns. They can never understand how much their lack of empathy reflects badly on their customer service. So what you're showing your reader, what you're showing your listener is that the people you have classified as they, other, these people are not the type of people you want to be associated with. Therefore, you keep emphasizing the fact that we are on this side and we understand how much the lack of empathy will reflect on a customer base. We know that. It's important that we understand that. However, those people over there so do not understand. Those people over there so we don't want to mix up with them. Those people over there, so what we like to call those people, heathens. Yes, those people are the heathens. So we do not want to mix up with them. We don't want to be part of them. We don't want them to be part of what we are about. We are about this standard. They are not about that standard. Okay? So we're going to take a quick break. More on persuasive writing techniques when we return. Welcome back to class time. So we're continuing our look at persuasive writing techniques. So our next technique is the use of cliches. Now, you might have come across this term before, but think about it now. How can you use cliches that you have before now been told to avoid to actually help an argument that you're trying to make? How would a cliche do this based on what a cliche is? So let's look. So now, as we understand, a cliche is an overused expression. And because it's an overused expression, a wide range of readers or listeners in your audience would be able to recognize it easily. So it's overused, but it's something that they're familiar with. And again, you can use familiarity to help you in your arguments. Now the effect. So a cliche, because of its familiarity, will reassure the audience. Now, it is something that they are familiar with. It is an expression that they know. So they already can accept the idea because you have introduced the idea that you're trying to convince them of using something that they know and probably something that they already agree with. So that is why using a cliche can help you. But of course, all things in moderation. So you don't want to use the cliche too much. You just want to drop it in like a little seasoning here and there. So you don't want to overuse the overused expressions. You just want to drop it in to help strengthen your argument, to help bring your reader, bring your listener closer to you. So here's the one where you could use a cliche. With the approval of the new wage package, all's well that ends well. So we've highlighted the section that is the cliche. All's well that ends well. So that's something most people are familiar with. Most people have heard this and they understand the concept. This means basically everything ready, everything governed, we're good to go. So when you put that in there, the first part, which you're trying to strengthen the argument up for, with the approval of the new wage package, that part now, you want them to agree with it. So you want them to understand that this new wage package, if it is approved, will be good for everyone. So when you include now the all's well that ends well, you're basically saying, if we do this, everybody will be fine. And on the flip side, you're saying, but if we don't do this, everybody will not be fine. We will have issues. So now, the use of connotation. Do you remember what connotation means? Think back. We looked at this under a different topic already. Connotation. And we use it with the term denotation. And we said denotation is the actual meaning of a word, the literal meaning of a word. So when you open up the dictionary, you're looking at the denotation. What is the difference, though, between denotation and connotation? So, denotation, the literal meaning of the word, but connotation takes it to a next level. So the connotation now is the emotional meaning associated with the word. So it's the feelings that these words will evoke. And these feelings can be positive or they can be negative. So you're going to select your words carefully. And you're going to select them carefully because based on the meaning, the emotional meaning associated with the word. Remember now, your whole aim in writing anything persuasively is to convince somebody. So everything you do has to have a deliberacy to it. It must have a purpose to it. So you're going to select these words specifically because of the emotions associated with those words. So certain words carry some positive feelings with them. Certain words carry negative feelings with them, even though these words mean exactly the same thing. So the impact of these words is what you're focusing on. The impact you want these words to have on your audience. So here we are now looking at the effect of using connotative language. So the associated meaning of the words now will arouse certain attitudes that you want in the audience. So if you want the audience to feel moved to agree with you, you're going to arouse certain attitudes in them. So you want them to feel angry at something in order to take your side against it. You want them to feel sad about something in order to take your side. So yes, it would almost look as if you're saying, but isn't this appeal to emotion? Not exactly, not completely, but they do overlap here because the use of connotative language can lead to an appeal to emotion if you're understanding the connection. So the connotation of a word can help you in making an emotional appeal. Now let's look at how you can get this done. So look at these two expressions. They're both saying basically the same thing. The first one, there is a pressing need to address the current health issue. Straightforward, easygoing. Same thing is being said in the second statement, but look at how it is being said. There is a crucial need to address the current health crisis. So you have replaced pressing with crucial. So you have added a sense of urgency. And you have replaced issue with crisis to also add a sense of urgency. So when you said there is a pressing need to address the issue, yes, it is important. But when you say there is a crucial need to address the crisis, you have upped the ante. You have made it sound as if we don't do this, all hell will break loose. If we don't do this, then everybody is going to suffer. You have added a certain level of importance to it that was there before, but is even more so there now. So keep that in mind. You want to use your connotative language to help to push your argument along. Now we're going to look at the use of jargon. You might have heard this term before. What do you remember about it? You might have heard various types of jargon before. Did you really think about what jargon means? And more so, did you ever think of how you can use jargon to convince people to take your side in a matter? Think about it carefully. So, what is it, first and foremost? So, of course, it's specialized words. So, specific words that are used in a specific context, right? And you will find certain jargon associated with certain fields or certain areas of activity. So, in the field of medicine, there are certain terms that doctors and nurses and medical practitioners will use. In auto mechanics, there are certain terms that those practitioners will use. In the kitchen, those of you who do home economics, those of you who do food preparation, there are certain terms that are associated with it. So based on the field, those of you who are athletes, certain terms that athletes will use as well. Now, if you have in your writing certain specified terms that are used by certain sectors of people, what do you think that helps to do to your argument? So if you're talking about a certain issue and you use the jargon associated with that issue, how exactly does that help your argument? How exactly does that help to get people on your side? Now, the jargon, of course, may not be understood by everyone outside of the field. So this is why you need to be careful. So you're going to use the jargon, but try and use the ones that people can figure out. So even if they don't really know the meaning, they can make certain associations. So you don't want to use so much of it that you alienate the very people you're trying to convince. So all things in moderation. So you're going to use the jargon to achieve a certain effect, which we will discuss shortly, but you don't want to overuse it to the point where your audience is lost out there in the wilderness. Remember, we talked about being in the middle of a jungle or in the middle of a desert. You don't want them to end up there. So you want to use it for a certain effect, but you don't want to overuse it to end up defeating the whole purpose of your argument. So the effect. The main thing that should have come to your mind when you thought about it is that it is going to persuade your audience by thinking that you know what you're talking about. So when you use up these specialized terms, you sound as if you are part of this group. You sound as if you actually know what you're talking about. So you sound like an expert. So instead of bringing in an authority figure, an external authority figure, you then become the authority figure in your writing. So the appeal to authority is really you now. You are the one presenting this information that a doctor would present, that a lawyer would present, that anyone in that field would present, because you are speaking like one of them. So look at this example. Certain medications can cause or worsen nasal symptoms. These include the following. Some drugs for high blood pressure, example, alpha blockers and beta blockers, antidepressants, and some medications for prostatic enlargement. Now look carefully at the terms that have been highlighted. These terms are examples of jargon. So these terms would be used by those in which profession? Based on what you are writing about here, it would seem as if this is somebody in the medical field. So right there, by using the same terms that doctors, nurses, and other medical practitioners would use, you now sound like a doctor, a nurse, or other medical practitioner. So your audience now will be impressed by you. They'll be impressed by the depth of your knowledge, because you understanding the use of these terms is saying to them, maybe he or she does know what they're talking about. Maybe I should agree with him or her. Maybe this is really what should happen. So you use the jargon to come off as being more persuasive, because they can be confident in what you are saying you know. What you told them sounds very much like the real thing. So now let's turn to the use of sensationalism. The very word itself sparks a certain idea in your mind, sensationalism. So, this one, what do you think you do if you're going to sensationalize anything? What are you going to do? And keep in mind, you need to be careful. For all of these techniques, you have to be careful how you use them, because if you use them well, they will help your argument. But if you use them incorrectly, they will hurt your argument. And we are not trying to do that. We want to stay on the path we have set, which is come over to this side, stay on this side, we're all in this together. So sensationalism, of course, when you present details in a certain way, that of course is going to provoke public interest or excitement. However, notice it says at the expense of accuracy. So you're not necessarily going to give the accurate information, and this is why you need to be careful how you sensationalize and what you choose to sensationalize. Because the idea is you are not necessarily going to stick to the facts. You're going to embellish them a bit, almost like hyperbole, but at the same time, you don't want to hurt your argument by going overboard. So you want to be sensationalized in the sense that you want something to grab their attention, basically. So if you think of when you read the newspaper or any article, and some of the titles of these articles are very, very sensational. So it's the title that grabs your attention, and then you read the article and realize, oh, it's not exactly what I expected, but the effect was there. This title grabbed your attention, piqued your interest and your curiosity enough that you actually went and read the article. So whether or not you were glad that you read the article afterwards is besides the point. The effect has been that it led you to read it. So when you use sensationalization, that's what you're trying to do. You want to grab the reader, hold them, and try to hold them long enough that you can tell them something, and hopefully at the end of it, they're on your side. So the audience now is going to be led to believe what you're saying. And they're going to be led to believe that what you're saying is very important. It's more important than what your opponent is saying. It's more important than what they had thought before. What you're saying is extremely important. It is of the utmost importance. It is a top priority because you have blown it up so nicely that to them now, it seems as if what I was thinking before is small fry. Right here is the big deal. So look at this example. So the despondent families of the inmates who were injured insist that there was an all-out brawl, not merely a fight. So here are some of the words you have used to sensationalize this issue. So you have described the family as being despondent. So they're not just sad, they're not just dissatisfied, they're not just upset, they're despondent. And then you have included the fact that the inmates were injured, and you could have even added another adjective to that to make the injury even sound more than it really was. And then notice it was an all-out brawl, not merely a fight. Because when you hear fight, you think regular fight. But when you put in the idea that it was an all-out brawl, this is not just any regular fight. This is like a battle royale. So it is an ultimate fight. So it's some ultimate warriors involved. So this now is why the family is led to feel despondent, because this situation has been expanded in such a way that it seems really, really critical that it is addressed. So right now, initially, you might have thought, oh, it was just a little misunderstanding. No, no, no. The way it is presented here, more than just a misunderstanding. So our next device we're going to look at is the use of tone. Now remember, you have tone of voice. So think about the effect of tone of voice. When somebody's voice changes, when it goes higher or lower, when the voice resonates more, what does it do for you who are listening? The same thing happens in tone in writing. Granted, it's a little more difficult to identify sometimes, but it can be done. So you change the tone of your writing for added effect. So what you're doing now, you want to convey a certain mood or feeling, and you're going to do this through your words. So the words you choose to use are going to convey a particular mood, convey a particular feeling. And of course, you do that because you want to generate the same thing in your audience. So you have two very broad categories. You have the serious tone and you have the comical tone. So serious tone because, of course, it's a serious issue. You want them to focus on it. You want to highlight the importance of it. And then you have comical because, of course, maybe you want to make it lighthearted. Maybe you want to trivialize something. So an issue that is serious to your opponent, you can present it in a comical manner to make it seem as if it's not that important. What are they making a big deal out of this for? No, this is not important to us. So you can use the tone to either make your situation serious or make your opponent's situation look ridiculous. So notice now, the effect is this. A shift in the tone can enhance the persuasive appeal. So maybe all along the tone was more or less neutral. And at this point now, you want to make that really impactful point. So you shift the tone to make it sound more in depth. You shift the tone to make it sound more detailed, more serious. So you want to shift your tone to create these different effects in the writing. So look at this example now. Inequity does not exist in a vacuum, and neither does humanity. For there to be inequity, there must be a conscious effort made to see that all are treated fairly. Now look carefully at the words used. We have used inequity. So we understand the idea of equality versus inequity. When something is equitable, it is fair. So it's not like you're going to give 10 people $10 when some of them need more than 10 and some can do it less than 10. To make it equitable, you'll give each person what they need. So you have used the inequity to bring in the idea of fairness. Then you continue now. When you say it does not exist in a vacuum, and then you compare it to humanity, you're touching on a certain feeling there, a certain idea. And then, of course, you continue now and explain that in order for there to be fairness, in order for there to be equity, you must make a conscious effort to see that everyone is treated fairly. So you have used this serious tone to bring across this serious idea. All right, so we're going to our final break. When we come back, we'll wrap things up. Welcome back. So we have more or less completed our look at various persuasive techniques. We looked at 3 different sets over the course of these lessons. So of course at this point we need to see how well you have retained what you have learned. So do you remember? So you're going to see various examples of different techniques. And what you need to do for each example, try and remember what technique it is. All right? If you don't remember, don't worry. That means you need a little more practice with that technique. So just note which technique you couldn't quite figure out, and you know you need to go do some added reading and practice, okay? All right, so let's start. So our first example. This complex relationship starts in your amygdala, which is where your brain processes emotions. It is theorized that it interacts with the visual cortex and the orbifrontal cortex. My word. Now look carefully. Is this using metaphors? Is this using hyperbole? What is going on here? Look at the key terms. What device is being employed right here? You know it? You remember it? Look if you got it right. Of course, the use of jargon. Notice quite a number of medical terms have been used. We are describing the brain, but we didn't just say the brain, the front brain, the back brain, the whichever side of the brain. We have used the actual anatomically correct terms. So we use the amygdala, we have used the visual cortex, we have used the orbifrontal cortex. So you have used the jargon associated with the study of the brain. And by doing so, you sound like you know a lot about how the brain works. Let's look at this one. Those who opt to vacation abroad rather than support local economy are disloyal to their country. You should remember that one. You got that one recently. Now, which technique is being employed here? Those who opt to vacation abroad rather than support local economy are disloyal to their country. What situation have you set up right here? Do you remember? Did you remember this? It is an attack. Remember, you can use praise or you can use attack. Again, in attacking, what you're trying to do is highlight the unfavorable position. So you want to show that we are not supposed to support this position because it is bad. Let's look at this one now. They will never truly understand what it is like for you because they have never experienced what you experience. They have not lived the life you live. Which device have you employed here? What technique is at work here? What are the key words that point to which technique is being used? They will never truly understand. They have never experienced. They have not lived. They are using exclusive language, of course. So again, you have set up the situation where this other, the belief that you want to show is not the one that they should agree with, is seen as the other, the undesirable. So it is represented by the they people. So you want your audience to be on our side. We have this situation that they cannot understand. Look at this one now. Prolonged exposure to blaring music, the blast of motor vehicle horns, and screaming machinery can negatively impact one's health. Do you remember this one? What are the key words in this one that you need to focus on? Blaring music, horns, screaming machinery. What are those words pointing you towards? Do you remember? Do you remember imagery? So the idea of creating pictures in the mind. In this case, we have created sound pictures in the mind. So you're hearing all these things and it is building up a certain feeling, because when you hear it, you can hear the unpleasantness that is going on around you. And of course, that should push you towards understanding why noise pollution is not something you should perpetuate. Now look at this one. There was a delay in the start of the project, attributable to circumstances beyond the control of the relevant parties. Progress came to a standstill, and there was no undertaking of the assessment of the problem and determination of the solution. Oh my, what does this one sound like to you? Think, quick. What does it sound like? Look at the words used. What idea, what concept is being conveyed by these words? What is happening in this group of words? We are using formal language. So notice you have utilized words like attributable. You have utilized words like progress. You have utilized words like undertaking. So you have utilized quite a lot of formal structures, formal diction, and therefore you have utilized formal language. On the flip side, if those of you who said tone, you're not wrong either, because the formal language sets up a very formal tone as well. So you have used formal language to enhance a formal tone in the writing. Remember, many of these devices will overlap. So they will do one thing, but at the same time, they're doing something else. But the ultimate result is that they're being used towards persuading people to take your side. Now look at this example. People who vacation abroad have had numerous exciting experiences to share. This one you should remember, but how well do you remember it? Think again. People who vacation abroad have had numerous exciting experiences to share. What technique is being employed right here? What are we doing? What are we trying to do in order to persuade? What we're doing is using generalization. So we have said people who do this. So we have not said some or a few. We have said people in general. So we're setting up a situation where it seems like it's common knowledge that people do this. So we have generalized the issue. And if we have generalized it, what we're saying is that you must understand and you must agree because everybody else understands, everybody else agrees. Look at this example. We who are born and raised here can truly appreciate being part of this community. We celebrate each other's wins and we console each other in times of mourning. We who were born and raised here can appreciate being part of this community. We celebrate each other's wins and we console each other in times of mourning. What technique are you using here? What is the idea you're trying to convey using this technique? Have it? Should have it. We looked at it today. We're using inclusive language. So we're using language that makes solidarity our purpose. Our aim is to make our audience feel a part of us. So when we use those certain pronouns, the we, the us, the our, that's exactly what we're doing. So, my dears, that's all for today. Class time resumes tomorrow at 9 a.m. with CSEC English. We will be learning about crafting the persuasive essay. Until then, keep safe.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much for watching.